Welcome to Project You. This podcast explores how integrating changes into your day can produce the best in health, longevity, and performance. We've recruited experts from around the globe who unleash their wisdom to transform your world. Project You dives into how to live a fully optimized life and uncovers tools and techniques to unleash your maximum potential. You only get one shot at this life, so let's get started.
Welcome. This is Tuesday Tactic number 7. I'm your host, Dr. Mitchell Schwent, host of the Project U podcast. This would be roughly episode 35 or something like that. But anyways, the issue today is something very simple, something very common, something that I know for a fact that you've experienced this year, or if you haven't yet, you will before the turn of the calendar year, and that's a sore throat. I wrote a post about this a few years ago, and it's sort of blown up and become one of the most popular posts of all time, even though it was very nuts and bolts and a little bit of science thrown in there. And you can certainly go back and read that post. It's how to deal with a sore throat. It's a simple problem, and the financial impact on a personal level and on a national level is immense. For example, a simple sore throat, if you go to a walk-in clinic or your doctor, you get an office charge, which is usually between $75 and $200. You get a simple strep test, which is probably about $50, depending on where you're at. And then oftentimes there'll be a follow-up test, usually a culture or a more expensive chemical test called a PCR test. That test by itself can cost $150 to $200. So just getting the problem figured out is already at well north of $200. Then if they decide to do some additional testing, the price just shoots up. The cost, I don't want to say price, the cost really shoots up. And it seems very excessive to me. And so I don't want to dive into all the science behind sore throats and strep throats and mono and all that stuff and all the causes. What I wanted to share a little bit about is the real heart of the matter. And that is one simple question. And the question is this: is it strep or not? And are antibiotics needed? And I personally don't think it should cost $200-$300 to figure out if your kid has strep throat. I'm in the same boat myself. A few years ago, I was traveling for business and consulting with some clients, and my wife called and said, I think one of our kids has strep. What should we do? Should I take him in? I'm like, absolutely not. Let's get on FaceTime. Let me look in the throat. Let's talk about what the symptoms are, and then we'll decide if we need antibiotics or is this something that we can just wait and see. And so I have the benefit of having the knowledge, but I wanted to share a little bit about that with you and also about the economic impact of sore throats. Worldwide, there are about 10 million strep infections a year. That number is much less, obviously, in the United States and North America, but in fact, over 12 million people seek care from a healthcare professional every year for a sore throat. That's 12 million people. Just multiply that by $200 to $500, and you can do the math and see the impact on a domestic scale. That's incredible. I don't want to bore you with the statistics. That's not why you're here anyways. The only thing I want to bring up now before I move on is there are some cases of serious strep infections which can affect the skin and soft tissue and muscles and actually cause toxic shock. These are very rare, not unheard of, but very rare, fortunately. So what I want to do is just kind of dive into just some basics about how to figure out strep or not. I'm not suggesting that you forego medical opinion. I just want to give you this for educational purposes only, and as a starting point, reference point to help you guide some of your own personal decision making. I have to preface this with a disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only, but let's jump into the Centaur criteria score. This scoring system has been around for a while, and it's one of the things that I use as a physician and physicians all over use to help predict strep and decide testing or not. And if you stick around to the end, I'm going to share something with you that you won't want to miss. It's a way to sort of hack the entire system, okay? And so the Centaur criteria, basically, these are the questions that we ask. Is there a fever of a greater than 100.4 or 38 Celsius? Absence of cough, no one's coughing. Are there swollen glands underneath the jaw, under the chin, just lumpy, bumpy, tender areas under the jawline? Are the tonsils swollen, and is there goo on there, white pus or exudate in medical terms? And then the age has some predictive value. The scoring system, unfortunately, isn't really valuable or validated for kids less than 2. But if a kid is between 3 and 14, a child between 3 and 14, and they have all those criteria above, there's a pretty decent chance that this is strep. If they're older than 14 and less than 44, there's no additional points for that. And if they're over 45, the chance of it being strep is a little bit less. It's not zero. We certainly see strep in adults, but it's less common. So I have this on the blog. You can find it with the table, the chart. Everything's all broken down for you. And there's a video that goes along with this too. It's mitchellmd.com/the $1 billion sore throat. And there's a dash between all those words, the-billion-sore-throat. So sorry, a bit lengthy for a web address, but I'm sure you can find it, or just type it in the search box and you'll find the video and the table there. And basically, depending on the score, that really should drive the decision making. So if the person scores like a score of 3, the chance of being strep is probably about 35%, and antibiotics should be used if there's positive tests there. If they have 4 or more, the chance jumps up to 50% or more, and the recommendation at that point is just to treat with antibiotics and decide based on social factors, household factors, or clinician preference about doing the test or not. And so that's certainly a discussion you want to have with your healthcare professional, whether or not they think a test is necessary. I see people like this all the time that come in, their sibling has strep, and sorry about that. Their sibling has strep and their throat's red, they've got a fever, and they got some goo on their tonsils, maybe a few little white donut-looking things on the soft palate. And so the chance of that being strep is very, very high. So in that setting, I wouldn't test those people. I would just go ahead and treat them. So there's no need to rack up another couple $100 worth of lab tests just to confirm something that you already know is there. Unfortunately, medicine oftentimes is practiced defensively. We do a lot more tests than we really probably need to do just to cover ourselves. I'm not the first to admit that, and I won't be the last. But anyways, I just want to wrap up this Tuesday tactic with that. I'll be doing a live Periscope later today, and the video is similar information, but the content is different. I don't strip out the audio from the video and use it as podcasts. It's just a different spin on the information. I realize people like to consume information in different ways, whether it's through a podcast, a video, or a blog post. So as always, thanks so much for listening. If you find value, I would love if you shared this and posted a review on iTunes. You can also find these episodes on SoundCloud and Stitcher. And if you haven't checked out the Tuesday Tactic on Periscope, you can find me at Dr. Mitchell MD. That's linked through Twitter. As always, be safe, be well, have a fantastic week, and I'll be talking to you soon with the next Project U podcast.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Project U. Head over to iTunes and leave a review, or join the conversation on the blog at mitchellmd.com. Have a great week.